Hello guys, SirDaVinci here. Welcome back to another episode of our weekly vendor reset for the division. Here we're going to be starting the base of operations hub, where all the DLC starts. Usually that's where I start, and that's where we're going to be starting now. So first vendor here, we've got the special equipment vendor, and this week we've got ourselves an LVOA-C. Now, I believe this is probably the second best assault rifle right now, just under the lightweight M4. High rate of fire, really anything is the way to go for the most part with all weapons. The rate of fire helps with the DPS output. This one's base damage is actually pretty high. My lightweight M4 is at 19.1k. This is only at just down like 400, so that's not too much of a reduction. It also has 20% enemy armor damage, which is actually pretty decent for that stat. Now the skills here, it's kind of heartbreaking to see this because this is so far when you look at the top, it's a pretty good rolled LVOA, but the talents aren't necessarily assault rifle specific. So we got vicious here. Obviously, really having high critical hit chance with anything is good to have, but if you're not running Alpha Bridge, there's obviously other talents you would rather have on a single assault rifle. We also have Deadly in the third slot, and we have Adept in the first slot. That's where like the heartbreaking kind of a thing comes in, because if Adept and Deadly were switched, this would actually be really good, or a lot better at least, because you could then roll away, Deadly or Vicious, and then you got Adept, which is like guaranteed critical whenever you use a skill, and it's in the third slot because of the high electronics requirement. So if those two things were swapped, then it'd be even better. But I mean, if anything, this is still a good gun to get. You could roll away Adept if you don't have the electronics for it, and probably get like Brutal or Responsive or something like that to output some more damage. Alright, so the next thing we've got here is a Striker's Harness chest piece. Comes with stamina right off the bat, which is a good stat to have on really anything. Personally, my preference. It also has 11% exotic damage resilience, 6% damage to elites, which I would roll away for armor, and then the minor attribute with 50% ammo capacity. So you've got three basically perfect things you want to have on it. It also has pretty high base armor. If you look over to the right, if you could get yourself a 1200 armor roll, that's going to get you pretty close to what mine is right now, and mine's actually pretty high. So. One thing I want to mention though, with 1.6 coming, armor is no longer going to be a stat that you can roll on gear, so that's going to end up being transferred over to health, and then if you have health like my chest piece, that's going to switch to like a resistance kind of a thing. So you don't necessarily have to have armor if you're looking or you're kind of trying to build for the next patch. But obviously having health instead of, obviously with armor switching to health, having health isn't bad to have anyway. So it's still good to roll armor. And also the gear score is not going up, so you're going to still be using the same gear that you are using now in 1.6. So just something to note really quick. Next up, we also have here a Predator's Mark chest piece. This one's base armor is a little low, has decent stamina roll on it. Also has exotic damage resilience, damage to elites, roll away for armor again, and ammo capacity. So this is like not a god roll, but like a low tier mid max, I guess, for Predator's Mark. The next thing here is another chest piece, the Deadeye chest piece. Now I don't really focus on sniper builds or anything like that, but if anyone is, this one has very high stamina roll, a very high armor roll. It has health on kill, which I personally would either have health or exotic damage resilience in that spot, and it also has increased kill experience in the minor slot, which you'd probably want to roll to ammo capacity, which isn't 100% necessary, which actually, come to think of it, if you're doing that farm where you try like a one-shot sniper build kind of farm in PvE, this is actually a really good one to have because of having the kill experience helps due to being able to like level up and get those level up caches. So this is actually a really good chest piece for that, especially since it revolves around a sniper gear set. So that's actually a really good one. The base armor had to have been pretty low because the major armor attribute bonus armor is pretty high, and it's still only 3120. But it's still a good chest piece if you ask me. It's got the armor. You can roll away the kill experience for ammo capacity if you want, or you can roll away health on kill for exotic damage resilience or health. Once again, this seems like to be like the week of chess pieces. Here we have a defense chess piece. I don't really mess with any other abilities other than like pulse and medkit anyway, so I know I'm kind of boring. But this one's got, once again, very high stamina roll because I think the max is like 1272. Armor roll's nice. The health on kill on it, you could roll for whatever you want in that slot. Personally, like I said, I prefer exotic damage resilience or health. And then it also has like ammo capacity already on it, so this is actually a really good one. You could even, if you wanted, keep the health on kill and roll for electronics if you want to focus on getting your skill power up for using the ballistic shield. Alright, next up we have some Hunter's Faith knee pads here. This one has, once again, a really high stamina roll of 1269, and like I said, the max is about 1272, I believe. The major attribute, you want to have armor here, so you'd probably want to roll that away. The only downside to these is that if you roll away the exotic damage resilience for the armor, you're not going to be able to roll away bleed, shock, or blind for the enemy armor damage, which you want in the minor attribute slot, but nonetheless, still a good knee pad roll if you ask me. Next up, we have Alpha Bridge knee pads. Obviously, everybody knows Alpha Bridge is the go-to build right now. If anyone's looking to build one, you've got some knee pads here with pretty low stamina roll. It's got health in the major attribute slot, which you want to roll for armor. And then you'd also got the increased kill experience, kind of pointless unless you're doing the farming in PvE. But you do have the enemy armor damage at least, and some disrupt resistance. Alright, so we also have here in the same special equipment vendor, prototype performance mod with 7% turret health. Turrets are really strong if you can get your skill power up enough, and it's probably, I think the preference is fire turrets right now. I don't really use them, but having extra health on your turret means that people are going to have to focus a lot more on destroying your turrets and leaving themselves open to being shot by you in PvP, so that'll definitely help out a bit. Alright, and the last thing in this vendor here is a C79 scope, 3.4 times zoom. We've got 17% critical hit damage, 3% critical hit chance, and 5.5% headshot damage. This is actually a really good scope to have. The other thing that I would kind of roll with a scope that that's major primary attribute is headshot damage or critical hit chance, but these are also actually really good, especially for SMGs. Really anything these guys are good for. But like I said, still I think the better ones would still be like the major attribute of critical hit chance. So instead of 3%, you'd have like 7, or the headshot damage of like 18%. But either way, if you don't have a scope that you would like to use, or that's good enough, you think, this is still a good one to go with if you don't have one that's primary attribute is like headshot damage or something. Alright, so now moving on over here to the special blueprints vendor for Phoenix credits. We first have here a Model 700 blueprint. The reason I would suggest this is because, really if you're just trying to focus on the sniper build, this is a good sniper for its guaranteed talent of elevated, increases your damage by 10% when elevated more than 1.2 meters above your target. 1.2 meters is not a lot, and it's actually, either way, I think one of the strongest base damage bolt action snipers there are, with it being able to get up to 117,000, at least with my firearms right now. And then it also has really high headshot bonus damage rolls on it, like up in 170%. Not guaranteed, but you can roll one really good. Personally, I would say try to get brutal, elevated's guaranteed, and then prepared. That way you get, when you're over 30 meters, you get extra damage there, so that's not a bad one to look at. We also have a first wave PF45 blueprint here. Not the best to go with. One thing to note is that there is a bonus if you use the sawed-off shotgun with Alpha Bridge. Its talents also get factored in with your 2 primaries. So having the first wave PF45 isn't as good. It used to be really strong when it first came out, but it got nerfed pretty hard. But I still like to keep them with, I forgot the ability, but like it has a percentage of chance to apply bleed on the target. So like say someone's trying to run away, I can switch, even if I don't have Predator's Mark as my build, I can pull that out and try to make them bleed so that they stop running and I can catch up. We also have Stamina Mask blueprint here. Really just your standard thing. I wouldn't suggest it just because there aren't really too many great masks, high-end mask talents at least, to have instead of a gear set piece. Alright, so now we move over here to in the base of operations to the advanced weaponry vendor. Nothing really special here, but we do have a surplus SVD semi-automatic sniper with 169% headshot damage. I didn't think that the semi-autos could get that high, but this one is. We also have 52.5k base damage, which I'm not too sure if it's high or not, but one thing to note is this guy comes with Prepared, which is a very good talent to have on snipers. Determined in the second slot, which I would roll away for probably Brutal, and then it has the guaranteed talent of Disciplined, which I'm not really a big fan of. I would rather have something else instead of that guaranteed. But I guess it's not too bad to have. You could at least have 2 decent talents if you're looking for something good. One thing to note with the surplus, not necessarily the surplus ones, but with the SVDs, they do have very low recoil, especially, and that's really good to have on semi-automatics. That way you can shoot them faster, so that way you can keep your shot as precise as possible while at a higher rate of fire, which is what these kind of snipers are intended for. But then again, you also still want to be precise with the headshots. But the SVD is good for higher rate of fire semi-auto snipers. Alright, so we headed over to the Autumn's Hope Safe House, and here we have a prototype performance mod with Ballistic Shield Damage Resilience. Now this will go paired well with the defense gear set, which is actually a nice chest piece as we saw before. So this is definitely a good pickup for anyone looking to roll a Ballistic Shield kind of defense build, so definitely check that out. Okay, everybody, I haven't even gone through all the vendors, and I'm probably going to name this one Buy of the Week for sure. Okay, here we are at the Wolves Den Safe House. Ignore the first LVOA-C that I showed in the Phoenix Credit vendor in the hub of the base of operations. This one here has very good base damage. I'm actually pretty sure that my lightweight M4 is rolled to the highest possible with 19.1 thousand, at least with my firearms currently. So 18.9 thousand was only 200 less. The enemy armor damage is on a little bit on the low side, but that's perfectly fine because if you scroll down here, we got Unforgiving, which is a great PvP talent like I was talking about before with it on the shotgun. So say you're in a gunfight with somebody else, while you're losing health, you're going to be getting your damage increased. So say they didn't have Unforgiving, and you were doing like the exact same damage as each other, you're going to be getting you're going to kill them first if it was just a straight up gunfight, because you're going to have increased damage the lower your health gets, and that's going to put them down before they can get you to 0. So that's a great talent to have, especially on the assault rifles, because they're like top tier right now. We also have Brutal, which is once again another great talent for assault rifles, because you always want to try and be aiming for headshots, and maximize your damage and DPS. In the third slot, we got Talented, which I would definitely be rolling away. I wouldn't necessarily give a specific suggestion for what to roll in that spot, but probably Destructive, I would say. That way you're doing more enemy armor damage on both PvE and PvP. Other than that, the other talents, maybe Responsive, that would be a pretty decent one to roll there, and maybe Vicious to get your critical hit chance up more. But I would personally roll Destructive there, and you'll have pretty much a god roll LVOA. A little low on the enemy armor damage, like I said, but still a very good buy, and I'm actually going to grab one myself. Alright, next up we are now at the Cavern Safe House. Here we have a nice pair of gloves here with Savage. Personally, my favorite type of gloves. I use these over any gear set piece. Make sure to always have these in slot. This one's rolled with Stamina. Personally, I roll firearms on my gloves, but it comes with Savage, which increases your critical hit chance by 7% against targets out of cover, which most of the time targets are going to be out of cover. If not, honestly, go knock them out of cover. This one comes with assault rifle damage, so if you're using assault rifles like most people, then this will definitely benefit you. And personally, I would roll away damage to elites for critical hit chance and then keep the critical hit damage. But if you're rolling these specifically for a PvE set, you could roll away critical hit damage for critical hit chance instead and keep the damage to elites. Although that's only going to help you with yellow name and named enemies, not the purple. I forget what they're called, but yeah. Either way, pretty nice pair of gloves. Not the best, but still pretty decent to get. Alright, so we now move on to the Meat Locker safe house here, where we have a nice extended mag, which I haven't seen one in quite some time. This one with 103% magazine size. Currently, I think the max is somewhere around like 107%, so that's actually really good. It also has critical hit chance and critical hit damage. Personally, I would probably prefer to have reload speed instead of the critical hit damage, because 4% isn't really all that much. But nonetheless, this is still a really good magazine size, or extended mag to have, and you always want to have magazine size in the main slot. Otherwise, I mean, I guess with LMGs, maybe you could kind of slide away with not running magazine size. You can run reload speed instead. But most of the time, for me at least, I kind of run meticulous on my LMGs, especially with the new stuff coming out in 1.6, which I have a pretty decent build planned. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm hoping it does turn out good, because I've never really made up my own build, and it would be pretty awesome to be able to have one that ends up turning out good. So definitely suggest this one. Alright, next up at the Madison Stand Safe House, we've got ourselves here a pretty decent Spec Ops backpack with Specialized as the talent. If you see, that is the talent I go to with my backpacks personally. This one comes with 882 armor, and it also has 15% burn resistance, which I would suggest rolling away for ammo capacity. I also want to note that it has firearms as the main stat. I do roll firearms as my main stat. Actually, now I'm looking at it, the armor on this one is actually quite higher than the one I have. The only downside being that the firearms, I think, are lower. Compared with... is it only 258 higher? Yeah, so firearms are low, but other than that, if you don't have one, I might actually grab this one myself, just in case it ends up being better to have the armor over the firearms, so why not? Definitely would suggest grabbing this one. Alright, the next thing we have here at the Ward Safe House is a performance mod which has 7% support station duration. I've noticed that this the support station has actually been really strong lately, and it's probably going to stay that way into 1.6. So having its increased duration is going to help out a lot, especially if you're someone who's like a medic to your team, and you have like the revive ability on it. That way it stays up longer, someone goes down, and they can then get revived by being in your radius of your support station, which then you might also want to pair this with something like the increased radius, just so that you have a spread out more area where someone can go down and still be safe to be able to get revived. So definitely something to notice if you are running a support build. Alright, we are now at the Southpaw Safe House, and I had shown off a prototype electronics mod earlier that had skill haste on it, but the electronics were a bit lower than this one. I think it was 233, and it was at the hub in the bottom left corner of the map. This one also has 3% skill haste, so definitely I'll probably cut it out, but definitely ignore the one at the hub and definitely go to this one instead. Otherwise you're going to waste a little bit of money. Not really that big of a deal, not a whole lot of money, but still definitely check this one out if you're running like a skill build. So alright, next up at the Grindhouse, we have a pretty much God Roll suppressor here. The Tyrant suppressor with 7.5% critical hit chance, 4% critical hit damage, and 6% headshot damage. I'm pretty sure 7.5, it might be 8, but I think 7.5 is the most you can get critical hit chance on the suppressors. The critical hit damage is always nice to have. 4% is a little low, but I don't really think you can get any other stat in that slot that's better. And then 6% headshot damage, always helpful to have on any gun, really. This one is going to be it's a smaller suppressor, so it works with your pistols and SMGs. Unfortunately, obviously not with assault rifles, but definitely a good one to look at if you're running any type of small weapon build. So now up here at the Firewall Safe House, we have another prototype performance mod that would go well with the support station, with it increasing the range. I know I was talking about before that having it maybe pairing up the support station duration with the support station range might be a good idea. I personally don't know. I don't really mess around with electronic builds much, but either way, here is a 7% support station range increase mod here at the Firewall Safe House. Alright, we are now up at the final safe house here, the crypt, I believe it is, up in the northeast corner. Here we have an AUG. Obviously, AUGs and SMGs are kind of on the low side, but I'd like to point this one out due to the fact that it has actually really high critical hit damage, 39%. I've never seen one that high before, personally. I'm not sure if it gets much higher than that, if at all. 16.4k base damage is actually pretty good for SMGs. The only downside is that the AUG has a pretty low rate of fire and a 25 bullet mag. This one has accurate, which is okay for SMGs. It does help out the most, I think, with SMGs, but it's still not the best talent to have. Fierce, with a high electronics roll, probably isn't going to come in handy too much, but Unforgiving is a pretty good talent for PvP, so either way, I wouldn't necessarily suggest this gun, but if there's anyone in there who really likes AUGs, I know I did when the game first came out, but here's this. And down here we also have a VX1 scope 12 times zoom with 18% headshot damage, which I think is the most you can get on them. Critical hit chance and critical hit damage, which are like the two top secondary stats to have on your scope, so at least for sniper scopes. So yeah, there's that if you need it. Alright, moving on to the Dark Zone vendors at the East 40th Street vendor here. We have a pretty good scope here for really anything. It's got 7% critical hit chance, 5.5% headshot damage, and 2% accuracy. Personally, I would prefer to have critical hit damage instead of the accuracy, but nonetheless, this is still a pretty good scope to have, and it's only 24,000 Dark Zone funds. As you can see, I don't have shit for them because I never go in the Dark Zone, but for people who do, this is a decent scope to get. Alright, now at the East 31st Street, bottom right corner of the Dark Zone, we have, once again, another LVOA. This one's not too great. The enemy armor damage is a pretty decent roll, but the base damage is quite low, and it also really only has deadly for decent talent on it, which also still is not great for assault rifles unless you're running Alpha Bridge. But what we do have here is a prototype performance mod with 5% pulse duration. You could obviously roll critical hit chance. Personally, I'm not a big fan of it. I usually run first aid self heal on all my mod slots, but pulse duration, you can get that up to 20%, and that's actually a really large increase on pulse if you're someone looking to highlight enemies for your team or even for yourself. But yeah, there's that if you need it. Alright, so here we are in the bottom middle Dark Zone safe house here, the 5th Ave safe house. Here we have a prototype electronics mod once again. This one not really focusing less on the electronics or skill power part of the build, but it also has 266 armor, which actually, that's a really good armor roll to have on your mods. And it also comes with 242 electronics. So if you're looking to run like a skill build but not sacrifice too much toughness, this is a good mod to pick up. Alright, here at the West 31st Street Dark Zone vendor, we have a pretty decent SRS A1 bolt action sniper here. The base damage is a little low. I think you can get it up between 110 115%. But it has pretty good headshot damage, 164%. But it also comes with toxic headshots. This weapon has have a 15% chance to apply the blind status effect, which is a pretty good talent. I've actually pretty much enjoyed it every time I've used it on a sniper. Have a chance at blinding a PvE enemy, and they'll kind of just sit there so you can pump more damage into them. It comes with capable, which I would personally roll away for prepared. And it also has brutal, which is like probably the top talent to have on snipers, which increases your headshot damage. Alright, here we are now at the West 34th Street Dark Zone vendor, where we have another decent extended mag here. We got 101% magazine size, 4.5% reload speed, and 5.3% rate of fire. This is almost like a perfect perfect roll for an extended mag. Personally, I would rather have critical hit chance instead of reload speed. And keep the rate of fire, because rate of fire is always good to have on any gun. And then you got pretty high magazine size and some reload speed. Alright, and lastly here at the West 53rd Street Dark Zone vendor, nothing too special, but we got a PP19 here with pretty low critical hit damage, a decent base damage, but it does have deadly and responsive. The guaranteed talent's going to be there, hurried, so you already can't really get a god roll on it. But hurried is still a pretty decent talent to have on SMG, so you can increase your reload speed. If you're doing an Alpha Bridge build, it'll help even more. And with that being said, having responsive and deadly is also a really good thing. That way you can have like an MP5 in your main slot and have this as a secondary. And and have some pretty decent builds.
That's fine.
Alright guys, once again, that will conclude our weekly vendor reset video for this week. We actually had some really good buys, especially that LVOA at, I forgot what vendor it was, but for base credits. That's actually a really good roll. I ended up buying one myself. Definitely be checking that one out, especially if you don't have an assault rifle. I mean, I might still use this just because of the fact that I want to try out an LVOA. I've never really had a good rolled one. So I'll definitely be trying it out at least. If you guys would like, I can make another video, a separate video of me going through the safe rooms in the dark zone if you guys would like that. The only reason I don't do it is because it's very time consuming, especially with the unfortunate kind of things that you can run into with NPCs being right outside that you get to take out, or PvP people, you know, rogues or anything just killing you when you're trying to get in and all that kind of stuff, and not being able to enter them while you're in combat. So it does take a lot of extra time. If you guys would like to see that stuff, because, I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, those are the kind of vendors you guys might want to see because they're not as easily accessible. So if you guys want to see that, I can show them if you guys ask for it. So just please, you know, any feedback down in the comments below is always appreciated. Like the video if you enjoyed, and obviously subscribe if you'd like to see more.